night is dark and full of theories.
What if Roose Bolton didn't betray Robb Stark? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. As the final details of the fresh marriage pact are agreed to between Robb and Lord Walder Frey, the king in the north allows himself to relax at last. At the very least, this problem was solved. After the wedding, they can march north and reorganize their army and gather reinforcements. It would be a few more hours before the wedding, and he intends to use that time to rest and relax. However, as he leaves the Great Hall, Lord Roose Bolton approaches him from the shadows.
King Robb, it seems like the matters between you and Lord Frey have been settled. Indeed, Lord Walder seemed rather amiable to the amends I've made. I was expecting him to demand more concessions. Indeed. Surprisingly amiable, you might say. It seems rather odd, don't you think? He's made such a big fuss about this betrayal, so much he would pull back his soldiers and risk treason. But now he's happy to put this matter behind him. What are you trying to say? That there is more to this than you realize, and there are certain forces that are trying to ensure you end up in this wedding, where you will not be surrounded by your soldiers, unguarded, vulnerable. Are you trying to say that the Freys are plotting some treachery? Not the Freys. Lord Walder has never been the courageous sort. He's spoken much of the slights he suffered by the Tullys, yet he's never actually acted on them. If he would not act against his liege lord, what more his king? Not unless someone is backing him and giving him assurances. The Lannisters? How did you come by this information? That is a story for later, Your Grace. The question you should be asking you is, what should you do about this?
He walks alongside Robb as the two pass through a darkened corridor, away from prying eyes and waiting ears. When night comes, Robb enters the feasting hall with far more somber mood. The rest of his warriors and bannermen appear merry. Even the Freys seem to be in good spirits as they welcome the Northmen as guests. Food and wine flow freely, but Robb sends secret orders for everyone to moderate themselves. They must keep their wits about them. Many grumble, but the king's word is law, and the men restrict themselves. This does not go unnoticed to the Freys, who mutter nervously. They wonder whether the Northmen might have caught wind of their plan. However, they have already gone too far to go back. Lame Lothar quiets those worries and urges them to keep going. He tries to coax the Northmen to let their guard down as best they can, and quietly moves more soldiers from the outside towards the twins. Even if they are prepared, they can still be overwhelmed by numbers. He simply trusts that Lord Bolton's men will handle the rest of the army outside. Yet even he feels his worry growing as they move forward with the wedding ceremony. As the feast begins to wind down, the songs begin to play. Low and mournful, it is a tune that has stunned the entire realm, the Rains of Castamere. With that, the die has been cast, and the Freys spring into action. Crossbows twang from the rafters, and men scream as they are struck. But rather than drunken surprise, many of the men are sober and alert. Greatjon pulls over a table and uses it as a shield, letting the warriors gather as they grab kitchen knives and spits or food. Some fall, but more are moving, grappling with the Frey men-at-arms that pour in. One knight rushes for Robb, but is cut short as Roose appears from behind and drives his knife into his back. The man cries out and falls into the ground, dropping to the floor. The two stand back to back as he hands the fallen knight's sword to Robb. The battle rages across the castle grounds as the Frey soldiers outside rush to attack the confused Northmen and the army. Yet while many are confused, the Boltons advance in perfect formation. It is a welcome sight for the Freys, whose numbers are reduced as many men are sent to the twins. But rather than joining the attack, Steelshanks Walton points his blade towards the Freys.
Men, the Freys have betrayed them. Make them pay for this treachery.
With a cry, the Boltons rush forward and fall upon the outnumbered Freys. Others rush to help the other Northmen, helping them emerge from the tents and rearming them. While they were expecting a focused rabble, they instead faced the sharpened steel of the North and Rivermen. The skirmish evolves into a clash, and then a rout, as numbers and fury make all the difference and drive the men-at-arms back. Once they are driven back, Steelshanks orders a squad of men forward in the keeps, where the battle is bloody, but not nearly as one-sided as many had expected. Robb remains standing, with a captured sword and shield. He stands behind an overturned table and directs the bannermen, who are also armed with stolen weapons. However, the arrival of fresh troops completely turns the tide as they are wiped out. Soon, only Lord Walder Frey is left standing as he watches the slaughter of his kin. He tries to back away, but his legs refuse to budge, leaving him firmly planted on the ground floor as they refuse to move. That is, until Robb approaches and leaves a sword pointed at his throat. His eyes turn to Roose Bolton, and he glares at the ruler of the Dreadfort Fort.
Traitor! You bloody traitor! Silence. The only traitor I see is you. Now, will you tell me everything and give me the truth? Or will I see to it that Grey Wind feasts on your bones? If you think that I'm the only traitor in your midst, then you are an even bigger fool than I thought, young wolf. Lord Walder is an old man with too much skin. Perhaps I may liberate him from some of it. Wait! Yes, all right. I was told by the Lannisters to do this. They gave me permission to act, promising that I would not be punished if I eliminated you and your bannermen. They would give me Riverrun. But I wasn't the only one either. They contacted Lord Bolton as well, and promised him overlordship of the North if he helped in the butchery. Lord Bolton? Is that true? Aye, it is. There was a time I thought that this war was lost, when your mother released Jaime Lannister, and when Stannis was defeated at the Blackwater. Without your hostage or another king to distract them, there would be nothing to stop Lord Tywin from marching with his Tyrell allies to crush you. So I sought to make a deal with him and ensure the survival of the North. The North? Or your house? Two things can be true, your grace. Now, will you take my head off too, even if I saved your life? Do not speak to me as if I owe you anything, Lord Bolton. Go. I will deal with you later.
Greatjon and Wendell Manderly both take hold of the Lord of the Dreadfort Fort and take him below. Meanwhile, Robb takes the rest of the Northmen to secure the castle. The few Freys and their men-at-arms all surrender, leaving them in control of the twins by morning. When the sun rises, Robb begins the grisly work of punishing their traitor. But there is some relief, as, aside from the Freys, the Northmen find Arya Stark among the people. She had intended to reunite with Robb. She is accompanied by the Hound and tells her story of how she managed to escape King's Landing. Many of the surviving Freys are executed after they confess their roles in the Red Wedding. A few are spared because they are deemed trustworthy. Among them are Sir Perwyn and Oliver Frey, who are granted Riverrun as a reward for their loyalty. Lord Walder is the last of them to die, as Robb has him write a confession. Copies of this are sent out, and the Riverlords send out men to spread this story. Soon, the rest of the realm will hear of this. Yet Lord Walder will not be among them, as Robb takes his head once the last raven flies. As the realm hears of this, everyone is stunned. It was one thing to use deception in war to win a battle, but to strike at someone who was offered guest right, that was something even Tywin's most vocal supporters are uncomfortable by. Naturally, there are questions and calls for accountability. His own bannermen share their own concerns, wondering whether this is true. His allies demand to know what he was thinking, as this puts them in a dangerous situation. Soon, the other lords of the Seven Kingdom who were defeated begin to question whether they are truly safe. If the Lannisters can go back on their word with this, what is to stop them from all being assassinated? Tywin tries to deny his involvement. He states that he was simply promised the Freys a pardon if they helped defeat Robb. He didn't tell them what they should do. It is a weak excuse that even his allies find questionable. Testimony from the Freys speaks otherwise, as they claim Tywin had sent the musicians who would play the Rains of Castamere. And even so, to pardon men who broke guest right is a grave risk. Robb hears of this report from the twins and can't help but smile. The offensive in the Riverlands ground to a halt, as the Tyrells are reluctant to continue supporting this war, not unless they have more information.
You see why I decided to join you. Lord Tywin considers himself cunning, but what he did here was reckless. You expect me to believe that you somehow predicted all of this? The Lords of the Seven Kingdoms do not like change. They do not like their norms challenged, the same ones that have allowed them to remain in power. But this action is a challenge to rule, a challenge to what people consider normal. If the High Lords begin to break these 1,000-year traditions, the small folk will look at one another and wonder why they must abide by them instead. And does that knowledge somehow make you think I would be less inclined to execute you? For what crime? I did not betray you. In fact, I would argue you owe your life to me. Because you were one of the conspirators who joined this plot. I am, but believe it or not, I wish for my house to survive this war. Tywin will offer me no mercy after what I've done. Therefore, I have no one to betray. And if that is not enough to convince you, I still have 2,500 swords under my command. Is your army so full of men that you cannot afford to waste those?
Robb considers for a moment. However, he already knows the answer to that question. He doesn't. That many soldiers can make or break his campaign, and he cannot alienate them anymore. Finally, he comes to his decision. He will pardon Roose, but he shall remain a hostage in Winterfell, unable to return home until the war is over. In the meantime, Lord Wyman Manderly shall garrison the Dreadfort, and, if necessary, kill any men who oppose him. When the rest of the Northmen hear of this role, few are willing to defend him. As the offense in the Riverlands is grinding to a halt, Robb sees a golden opportunity to act. He goes through with his plan of attacking Moat Cailin and gathering reinforcements, but Roose advises Robb on the next phase of this plan.
Do you still intend to continue your plan of declaring independence? We've gone too far to simply put aside my crown now, indeed. But you must know that you will never have that independence so long as Lannisters sit on the Iron Throne. You cannot simply hope to hold the North and Riverlands until they accept your terms. No, the time has come to play kingmaker. You would have me return to southern politics, even after it killed my father. If you hope to hold your kingdom, you must have a king on the Iron Throne that remains friendly towards you. There is too much bad blood with the Lannisters, but perhaps there is another candidate. Who? Who knows? But one thing is clear. You cannot allow the Lannisters to remain in power.
In that regard, Robb agrees. Soon, his army marches back north, but a force under Sir Wendell Manderly remains to garrison the Twins to ensure that no one dares their cross a second time. Aside from that, 700 Bolton men are ordered to remain behind to help secure the Riverlands and take advantage of the slowdown in military action. This was done by Robb to further weaken Roose's capabilities. These 700 are placed under the command of the Blackfish, who turns his sights on Harrenhal, which the Mountain holds with 2,000 men. As he marches south, the Blackfish gets the aid of more river lords, rallying their troops into his army. He soon gathers a contingent of 4,000 men, but though he might outnumber the Mountain's contingent, they have enough men to defend Harrenhal. While some advisors suggest gathering more men or perhaps encircling the massive castle, the Blackfish smiles. He reminds them that his good sister was a Went, and he has traveled to Harrenhal many times. As a result, he knows many of its secrets. A smile curves on his lips as he places Jason Mallister in charge of leading an attack with scaling ladders to draw their attention. Soon enough, the Mountain and his soldiers wake up to a great clangor outside the riverfolk, rushing ahead with 4 large scaling ladders, while others bang their shields and blow horns. Already one ladder is placed, and men are hurrying to climb it. The Mountain waves his greatsword about and orders his troops to meet them. They arrive just as the first of the Bolton men arrive. The men-at-arms are cut down by 4 spears running him through. Yet, as he falls, more take his place. The Mountain bellows and sweeps his sword back and forth, hacking through these men. Yet, down below, the Blackfish and 40 men-at-arms sneak through the moat, wading through knee-high water and rushing the reeds as cover until they reach a small door meant for servants.
Found this place when I was younger. It gave me a chance to get out during my leisure time.
A few of the older knights laughed as he braced his shoulder and rammed against the door, caving the old wood in an instant. The men rush inside just as the battle is heating up on the walls. With the Mountain commanding the troops, they prevent the riverfolk from establishing a proper foothold, but they must also concentrate many of their soldiers there to beat them back. Because of Harrenhal's large size, they cannot guard every inch, and the Blackfish soon opens another gate for hundreds more men to join him. They rush the Westermen's position, cutting down the archers in the guard tower, and then advancing upon the massive knight's position. Sir Gregor turns too late, realizing he is now cut off. However, at this point, it is too late as he cannot back down and finds himself pressed on both sides. The Mountain roars defiantly as the Blackfish and his troops methodically secure the walls, cutting down the remaining Lannister men until the massive knight is the only one left. He continues to swing his sword, unafraid of the advancing foes, but soon faces a wall of thrusting spears that cut him down. With that, Harrenhal falls right back into the Riverlands' hands, and Tywin loses one of his best enforcers. Although the Tyrells are in Maidenpool, they do not send aid, even when reports of the Riverlands' counterattack. Part of this is to hedge their bets, but also in part because they remembered who attacked Sir Loras during the Tourney of the Hand and are happy to be rid of him. Soon enough, the Mountain, Lord Walder, and many of their soldiers' heads are sent to King's Landing, warning them of future incursions against the lands. The former's head is given to the Martells per the Blackfish's suggestion, as he knows about the long enmity between the Lannisters and the Dornish. As these gifts are presented, they reiterate their terms of recognizing Northern independence. However, once again, Tywin refuses them, but he recognizes his position is not as strong as it once was and works to shore it up as best he can. The main thing he does is push for the marriage alliance between them and the Tyrells so that they can present a unified front and ensure the continued support. He claims that he had no part in the Red Wedding. He follows up by publicly announcing in front of the court that he will allow the Tyrells to break off the marriage pact if they are so uncomfortable with the rumors that they no longer trust the Lannisters. Though Mace might be concerned, he recognizes this opportunity is too good to be true. He agrees to go through with the marriage, but also ends up giving Tywin the public support he needs. On the day of the wedding, things seem to go off without a hitch until the wedding feast, when, after eating the pie, Joffrey begins to choke and gag. He collapses onto the ground and clutches his throat as he dies, seemingly on his feet. But others suspect poison, and Tyrion is arrested, while his wife, Sansa, flees King's Landing, making it appear as though she had a hand in this. Rather than accept the punishment, he demands a trial by combat. To everyone's shock, the Red Viper agrees to represent Tyrion. Without the Mountain, Tywin must turn to other warriors to face off against Prince Oberyn. Unfortunately, he lacks many competent fighters he can spare and is forced to settle on Sir Balon Swan of the Kingsguard. On the day of the duel, the knight proves to be strong, fast, and gallant, fighting with every ounce of skill he has. However, he is no match for the Prince of Dorne, whose skills are legendary. The duel ends when he drives his spear into the knight's chest, ending his life. With that, Tyrion is declared innocent, though he soon flees the city. Tywin tries to use this opportunity to gain sympathy for his cause. Now that he cannot blame his son, he shifts the blame to Sansa, who they say fled the scene, and uses that as an admission of guilt. All of this proves that Robb Stark is not the honorable man they think he is, as he claims he must have ordered his sister to do this. While some are willing to believe this, it still does not heal the wound caused by his actions in the Red Wedding. Unfortunately for Tywin, protecting Tyrion wasn't the only way Oberyn planned to ruin Tywin's plans. Little does anyone know that he also placed poison in the old lion's food. It is subtler than the ones used on Joffrey, slow acting, and comes into effect as stomach pains. These happen long after the situation in the Purple Wedding dies out, and the Lord of Casterly Rock soon dies in the Privy days later, after his condition grows worse. By then, the Dornish party leaves and takes the Mountain's head with them. On the way back to Sunspear, Oberyn takes the chance to admire it. He considers the possibilities of this gift. When he presents it to his brother, Prince Doran smiles and places it on a pike outside the wall. But this pleasure is overshadowed, as his mind is already planning their next move. Though Tywin Lannister is gone and the Lannisters are dealt a crippling blow, they remain in power and still have the chance to rule through Tommen.
It seems to be the greatest surprise in this war was the emerging talent of this young Robb Stark. More than once, he has evaded the jaws of death and snatched victory when he was surrounded by defeat. Indeed, it is always surprising to see such young flames burn bright. But if the boy were to survive into adulthood, he could make for a monster on the battlefield, and a bane to our enemies. I think he may already carry that potential within him. At least if he were to be properly guided, don't you think?
The two brothers smile as, up north, Robb returns, allowing him to wipe out the surviving Ironborn and retake the lost castles. All of that deprived the Greyjoys of any of their initial gains. Winterfell is recaptured, and he uses it as a recruiting ground to gather new levies. As the armies begin to rise, a raven arrives from Sunspear, congratulating him and offering an alliance. They are willing to support the North in independence and offer their spears if Robb continues his campaign in the South. It is just the boon that Robb was looking for, as it gives him the means to carry out his war and the potential to gain an additional 25,000 spears.
The alliance with the Martells would be a great boon to our cause, but we must not get carried away. We are still in a disadvantaged position. The marriage between Joffrey and Margaery shows that the Reach still supports them. Even with Joffrey dead, they may see this as a chance to sink their claws into Tommen.
I do not quarrel with the Reach.
No, but they will not settle for losing two of the regions, nor will they take the Dornish backing of your independence lightly, King Robb.
Robb nods soberly. While recent events have worked in their favor, they are still in a difficult position militarily, as even with the new levies, they only muster some 15,000 men, plus the remnants of the Riverlands. If they are to march south again, they will have to contend with the massive Reach army that already has a toehold in the Riverlands, thanks to their captured Maidenpool. But he looks at the map and considers another possibility. Aside from the Westerlands and the Reach, the Iron Throne also holds the Stormlands, but their grip there is tenuous. They have no massive armies there, and the Stormlords only defected recently. It is the soft underbelly of the Iron Throne. Robb continues to levy more troops into his army, urging the men to rally to his cause. But this time he focuses on the clansmen who missed out on the original campaign, as well as the houses that make their homes in Wolfswood. Clans Wool, Flint, and Norre all answer the call, as do the Foresters, Woods, and Bulls from the Wolfswood. This army numbers some 3,000 strong and is placed under Robb's personal command, while the main northern army is given to Robert Glover, with Roose Bolton set to accompany Robb down south. They use the new fleet Waymond Manderly constructed for the north. Though small, it is enough to transport them south, and with the royal fleet devastated, they cannot challenge their passage south. The fleet cuts through the waves beneath gray skies. Sea spray lashes against the prows as 3,000 Northerners, Foresters, Rangers, and Cloudsmen set sail silently toward Cape Wrath. At dawn, they land near Weeping Town. The local garrison, lightly manned and unprepared, falls swiftly. By the time the words reach Storm's End, Robb is already marching inland. Yet the castle, tenaciously held by Stannis, is unable to do anything as they barely have the men to guard their castle. However, the rest of the region decides to act, as many of the Stormlords feel no great loyalty towards the Lannister king, especially after the fiasco in the Red Wedding. Many now fear that the Westerlands may do the same, and instead opt to join forces with the young wolf. Houses Morrigan, Penrose, and Stademon are all quick to join forces with him, rallying to his banner. The Dornish are quick to seize the opportunity, as Lord Fowler orders his vassals to attack from the Prince's Pass to invade the marches. Lord Philip Foote, one of the few loyalists, tries to hold him back at Nightsong, but he stands alone as Robb's army attacks from the north. Their advantage is swift and brutal. Bolton riders strike under the cover of night, slipping through the woods like shadows, while the Wolfswood men ambush patrols along the narrow roads. Villages that swore fealty to the Iron Throne surrender before a single arrow flies. This prompts houses Swan and Selmy to join the attack, forcing the new lord to surrender in exchange for keeping his castle. Within a fortnight, Robb's banners fly over half a dozen Stormlander keeps. At Robb's side is Roose Bolton, whom he dares not leave untouched.
You see, your grace, these southern lords bend the knee to whomever arrives first with steel in hand. And if not, I can teach them.
You mean torture them?
You think a king may rule without torture, especially with lords as fair weather as these. They once called themselves Stannis' men. Before that, Renly's. Now they call themselves yours.
I will not begin my reign through terror, Lord Bolton. I will not give them reason to rebel.
As you say, your grace.
The campaign is small but surgical. Robb knows he cannot hold the entire Stormlands unless all declare for him, so he strikes fast and moves constantly, cutting Lannister supply lines bound for King's Landing. The defeat at Blackwater has left the region scattered, its new garrison stretched thin, and their loyalties uncertain. And most of all, it acts as a land route between the capital and the Reach. Soon, a third of the Stormlands rise in open rebellion. The Lannister-Tyrell alliance, already stained by unrest in the Riverlands, suddenly faces a second front of war. Further north, Sir Brendan Tully and Goblet Glover strike. With the Mountain dead and Tywin gone, the Lannisters command structure Freys. They raid deep into the Reach-held Riverlands, burning supply trains and severing roads between Maidenpool and Duskendale. Randall Tarley, wary of overextension, pulls his men back to fortify coastal towns until reinforcements can come. Mace is eager to secure his holdings and plans to send more troops. He divides his forces, with one contingent rushing the Stormlands and the other advancing toward the Riverlands, just as Devon Lannister gathers the rest of the Westermen. Rather than going on the offensive, the Blackfish organizes his men in a defensive formation, aiming to keep the enemy army at bay, and this pays off as far fewer men manage to arrive than expected, thanks to the Dornish. Under Prince Oberyn's command, raiders cross the Prince's Pass, harrying the Tarley and Florent lands. They burn crops, destroy bridges, and vanish into the sands before any counterattack arrives. It is not yet a full invasion, but enough to force the Tyrells to recall soldiers from both the Riverlands and King's Landing to defend their borders. The Iron Throne's strength is split across three bleeding fronts: the Riverlands, the Stormlands, and Dorne. Yet the Starks soon have to contend with a new front in the most unexpected place. While their armies war in the south, another army arrives from the Wall, a host of wildlings. They batter the exhausted Night's Watch, and many of their men fear that they may breach the Wall entirely. However, their salvation comes from the most unexpected place, as Stannis Baratheon reappears, leading an army that decimates the wildlings. He comes to win over the north and answer the Night's Watch pleas. The wildling horde is broken. Mance Rayder captured, and the Night's Watch saved. Many northern lords praise Stannis for his valor. Yet they did not join him. Stannis comes with warnings of the White Walkers and urges the North to rejoin the Iron Throne. However, they see this as desperate deceptions, and many do not take it seriously. If Robb were in Winterfell, that might have been one thing, but with Stannis alone, Catelyn does not trust him. She recalls the shadowy assassin who murdered Renly and worries that this may be another deception. The Northern Lords waver. Some see promise in Stannis' offer, unity, protection against the wildlings, but others whisper that the King of the North's cause still lives, and that Robb will soon return with victory from the south. They say they are willing to work with Stannis and even back his claim, but all of that is prefaced with recognizing Northern independence. Stannis Baratheon stands before the wall, his banner snapping against the howling wind, but he barely feels the cold as his rage burns hot. His victory over the wildlings is hollow. The Northern Lords do not rally and refuse his claim unless he will grant them his concessions. When his envoys return empty-handed from Winterfell, Stannis makes a decision.
If the North will not stand with me, then I shall take the North by other means. Bring me Mance Rayder.
So, this is how the last Baratheon begs for a crown. From men he threatens to burn.
I do not beg. I offer. The wall divides us both from what we need. A realm that will not kneel. I will give your people the freedom they seek and the safety from the White Walkers. Without you, they will have no army to threaten us. You are still their king, so I mean to use you to get them across.
And we defeat your enemies for you.
Do not act as if you want foes too. If they are too stubborn to reject your passage, then they put my realm at risk, and I shall see them punished.
Against all expectations, Mance accepts. He rides out and begins gathering wildlings yet again. Raiders like Mother Mole and Tormund hear this and rejoin him, especially when he promises the gates will be opened again. Stannis orders them to be allowed through, as they have pledged their loyalty to him. The Night's Watch, bound by an oath to remain out of the conflicts of men, cannot interfere. Jon Snow watches helplessly as wildlings march across the Gift, their ragged host swelling with every league. He does send a letter, but in truth, there is little they can do, as most of the men have marched south. In the south, the Lannisters regroup. Weakened by Tywin's death and the loss of much of their influence, they lean heavily on the Reach. But now Kevan Lannister commands, cautious, steady, and far shrewder than many give him credit for. He takes a small host and reaffirms the loyalty of Houses Buckler and orders the border territories. He then begins to send letters, revealing Stannis' appearance in the north. All of that complicates things for the Stormlanders. Robb is an ally, but he isn't and never will be their king. Stannis could be. He is the most viable replacement, and this causes some to waver. Slowly, the tide begins to turn. Supplies dry up, and fewer levies arrive. Kevan watches all this as he weakens Robb through attrition and begins to wear his forces down. Seeing this, Robb must call his offensive and retreat south to regroup with the Dornish, who now control the marches. Roose watches all of this with a rueful smile.
You see, Your Grace, without fear or loyalty, men scatter. The Stormlords are not wolves. They will not die for you.
And you think torture will help?
Fear is better than nothing, Your Grace. If they at least feared the knife, they would reconsider leaving you as quickly as they do.
The Leech Lord speaks truly. This is a difficult situation, and we cannot rely on honor alone. Surely you can see how that honor has nearly killed you. So I'm to be a monster.
There is hardly anything monstrous about reminding your lords of their place, especially when they so easily forget.
Reluctantly, Robb nods as his army regroups and licks its wounds. While he tends to his men, he finally allows Roose to act and begin taking care of the dissidents. He has already created a list of men who are disreputable and gives him leave to do as he wishes. Soon enough, these fair-weather lords are pulled aside and begin to face whatever torture the Leech Lord has in store. These are met with stern warnings from them to remember their allegiances. Roose fills them with reminders that Stannis might be a Baratheon, but he is far away in the north and unable to save them. He does not kill any of them, for Robb reminds him that killing is how they turned on the Lannisters. So once Roose has his fun, he sends them away with bruises, broken bones, or blackened eyes. While many mutter about these cruelties, they were sure to never do this openly and reconsider any treasonous thoughts. As he reunites with the Dornish host, they consider their next move. These efforts help staunch the bleeding, but do not stop it entirely, not unless they deal with the underlying issue. They have no figurehead for the Stormlanders to rally behind.
It does not matter how many skins Lord Bolton flays or how gently you treat them, young wolf. You are still a foreign king, and you have made your intentions clear.
These men only follow so long as it is convenient for them, not unless you give them reason to.
You mean another king? But who?
The Iron Throne belongs to the Lannisters. Incorrect. The Iron Throne belongs to the Baratheons. The Lannisters hold it only because of their children's increasingly tenuous claim. Give them a true-blooded Baratheon, and they shall have them.
You cannot mean Stannis. We've already tried to negotiate with him, but he refuses to even recognize independence.
Stannis is a brother, but children take precedent over them, and King Robert has always been open when it came to his seed. I recalled him having a son who resided in Storm's End, a gallant boy, one whom many of these lords might recognize more than Stannis. It would also change Stannis' claim and force him to come to the negotiation table.
So where is this boy?
Lys, it would seem. Fortunately, my brother has connections in the Free Cities and can rescue him.
In Sunspear, Prince Doran listens quietly as word of the Stormland rebellion reaches him. His eyes, ever calm, linger on the map stretched before him. He sends a quiet word to his agents in Lys, mercenaries, merchants, and spies loyal to House Martell. Their target, a boy with dark hair and blue eyes, Edric Storm, the acknowledged bastard of Robert Baratheon, is found alive and well, hidden under false names and smuggled from the Stormland after the Blackwater. The knights with him are not keen on giving up the boy, as Doran sends his agents to recover him. They bar the doors until they hear that they intend to crown him to fight the Lannisters, and without a word from Stannis, they hand him over. Doran's agents bring him back to Sunspear, where the young man kneels before him.
I am no king. No, but you will be one, if you wish to see your father's name redeemed.
By year's end, word spreads across the southern coasts. A new Baratheon has returned. The Stormlords begin to stir once more as Robb vows to support his claim. Now any loyalty to the Lannisters vanish, especially after Cersei's misrule disappears. In Storm's End, Northmen, Dornishmen, and Stormlanders bow before Edric as they place a crown on him. And as king in the north, Robb legitimizes him as Edric Baratheon. When this happens, the Stormlanders and Kevin's army begin to desert, fleeing to the winds as his assault in the Stormlands grinds to a halt. But now, he had managed to push as far as Felwood, but must stop as the Stormlanders simply march off. While they might consider it dishonorable to turn upon the Lannisters they had previously allied with, Robb and Oberyn have no such qualms. They begin their attack and strike at Sir Kevan, who tries to retreat. He moves towards the coast, but is eventually defeated when he makes his stand along Shipbreaker Bay. The advance guard of Northern Cavalry and Dornish riders raids his army's position, harassing them and preventing them from fully forming up. They take out his scouts and then allow Robb to launch a sweeping flanking attack that pins the Lannisters against the coast, allowing Oberyn to wipe them out. But even with this victory, Robb finally hears of the chaos in the north. Soon enough, the wildling army Stannis assembles numbers close to 25,000, plus more non-combatants. While they are properly equipped, they are well led by Stannis, and their giants and mammoths help even the odds. Worse still is the fact that many of their lords are down south fighting with Robb. Carhold falls quickly, followed by Lastheart. Stannis permits the wildlings to raid, but prevents them from raping and pillaging the countryside. Stannis' wildling host marches south, burning villages that defy them, seizing keeps that refuse to yield. The free folk follow him out of hunger, not loyalty, but they follow nonetheless. Robb is too far away to leave, and the few Northmen who are there, the Manderleys, Tallhearts, and Dustins, try to resist as best they can. Soon, Winterfell comes under siege, with Arya as its lady. Though the castle is old and garrisoned, they find themselves increasingly isolated. Snow drifts across the broken fields surrounding Winterfell. The air hums with the sound of war horns and the distant groans of mammoths. Within the ancient castle's walls, Arya Stark stands on the battlements, staring at the wildling host that encircles their home. Never before have the wildlings posed such a threat. Beside her, Sandor Clegane spits into the snow.
Half of them don't even know how to hold a bloody sword, but they've got giants. Can't fight those with courage.
Then we fight them with fire.
He grunts, almost approving. Since Robb's departure, the Hound has taken command of the garrison, a mix of Stark soldiers, Manderley guards, Dustin men-at-arms, and Wintertown volunteers. Arya walks the walls each day, offering words of courage to soldiers who once barely knew her name.
We hold for the North, for my brother, and for Winterfell. Remember what they say. The North remembers.
The defenders answer her cry with raised blades and fists. The Hound nods grimly before ordering the archers to loose. Flaming arrows arc into the night, scattering the first rank of warriors. The wildlings roar in defiance but falter. Stannis' men, disciplined and dour, press the siege relentlessly, yet even they begin to tire as the days stretch into weeks. From time to time, the Hound sorties out, greatsword in hand, as he cuts down the enemy soldiers left and right. He is just as fierce as any wildling, and with his dull plate, nearly untouchable. Mance Rayder warns Stannis that the free folk's patience wanes. They are built for raids and lightning-quick attacks, not sieges. But Stannis recognizes that this is the key. If Winterfell falls, they can shatter the morale of the rest of the North. So he refuses to surrender, sending wildlings attacking at a dozen points, battering their defenses down. They manage to beat back every assault. They send mammoths and giants to strike. But Arya has men set traps with caltrops, stakes, and pitch and fire. Even when he sends their knights, they just barely hold out as the Northmen are able to rally and begin sending raiders to attack their rear. Before they even realize it, a month has passed, and this allows an army to mobilize. As they prepare for another assault, the sound of horns fills the horizon air, not from Winterfell, but from beyond the horizon. The banners do not bear the sigil of House Stark, but the falcon of the Arryns. Behind them rides an army of knights in shining plate, their lances glinting like silver fire. At their head rides Peter Baelish, smirking beneath his hood, with Sansa Stark by his side. The veil descends upon the wildling host like an avalanche. Stannis' army hurries to order a shield wall, and while his knights brace and hold, the rest of the army breaks before them. The wildlings lack discipline and shatter. Giants bellow and fall beneath cavalry spears, and mammoths scatter, trampling their own.
Well, girl, seems the birds learned to fly after all.
By sunset, the wildling host is shattered. Those who survived flee into the woods, while Stannis' remaining knights throw down their arms and regroup some leagues south, trying to rally whoever they can. Littlefinger rides to Winterfell, draped in victory.
My Lady Sansa wished to see her home restored. I had helped her escape the capital, and now I return her to her home.
Catelyn thanks him, but Arya narrows her eyes in suspicion. The Hound privately tells them not to trust a word he says. Littlefinger has a way of making everyone do exactly what he wants, and to make it seem like it was their idea. When Robb's fleet finally reaches White Harbor, the news of Winterfell's salvation reaches him. He rides hard for home with Roose Bolton at his side. Winterfell stands, its walls scarred but unbroken, yet Robb's return is met with grim tidings. Stannis lives, rallying who he can and preparing for another attack. In the Great Hall, the tension is thick. Roose and Littlefinger both urge Robb to end it.
Mercy is a luxury, Your Grace. Kill him, and none will contest your crown again. The wolf cannot share the throne with this stag. One will always devour the other. I hear you wish to crown Edric Storm. Do it and you shall have the Vale's support, but only after this one is dealt with.
Robb's jaw tightens. He remembers his father's words, his mother's doubts about Stannis, of the betrayals he suffered. Roose is sure to remind him, telling him that honor nearly led to his death, but he also recalls how Stannis had ridden north when no one else would, even when he couldn't. He did that out of duty and honor, rather than ambition.
No. Honor is not weakness. Not when dealing with worthy foes.
He offers Stannis terms. Edric Baratheon shall remain king, and Stannis named protector of the realm. His daughter, Shireen, will wed Edric to unite their lines. In return, Stannis will help settle the free folk beyond the wall under his command. For the first time, Stannis smiles, grim and fleeting.
A just sentence. Seems you have the makings of a competent king, boy. But may I make a suggestion?
He warns him of Littlefinger. Claims to be an ally, but allowed Ned Stark to die, allowed Sansa to be tormented, and sat back for months with the Knights of the Vale. The Hound also confirms this, reminding them that he watched Joffrey as Lord Baelish planted schemes into his mind. Littlefinger hopes to eliminate Stannis and use the new king to push his agenda, but when he's called forward, they do not reward him, as they demand answers for this crime. Littlefinger's charm finally fails him. He is seized and executed in the courtyard where Ned once passed judgment.
The North remembers, and so does House Stark.
With Stannis reconciled and Edric crowned, the realm unites for the final assault. The North, Dorne, and the Stormlands march together. Their army marches south, joining the Blackfish, who continues to defend, and his position becomes more secure now that Kevin Lannister is dead. These reinforcements are too much, as Mace must retreat, while the Allied host surrounds King's Landing from the Stormlands and Riverlands. The Allied host surrounds King's Landing. Within the city, famine and fear take hold. Cersei clings to Tormund's throne, but even the Goldcloaks turn against her. After a brief siege, the gates open. The lions of Lannister fall, not with a roar, but with a whimper. The bells of the city toll as Edric Baratheon enters the Red Keep. Robb and Stannis stand beside him. Their first act is to execute Cersei, while Tommen must swear to relinquish the throne to Edric. Mace and the Reach are stripped of their positions in the small council, while Stannis recognizes northern independence at long last. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.